Introduction. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution is one of the most important and celebrated legal provisions in the country. It guarantees citizens the freedom of speech, religion, press, assembly, and petition, which are collectively known as the Five Freedoms. The freedom of speech, in particular, is a cherished right that protects individuals from government censorship and ensures that they can express their opinions and beliefs without fear of retribution. This essay will explore the history and significance of the freedom of speech in the United States, as well as the limitations and challenges that it faces in contemporary society. Historical overview. The freedom of speech has deep roots in American history, dating back to colonial times when dissident voices challenged the authority of British rule. The famous case of John Peter Zenger, who was charged with seditious libel in 1735 for publishing critical articles about the governor of New York, is often cited as a milestone in the development of free speech in the United States. Zenger was acquitted by a jury, which established the principle that truth was a defense against libel, and that the government could not suppress dissenting opinions. The freedom of speech was enshrined in the First Amendment in 1791, as part of the Bill of Rights. The framers of the Constitution recognized the importance of free expression for the functioning of a democratic society, and sought to prevent the government from becoming a repressive force that could stifle dissent and undermine individual rights. However, it is important to note that the freedom of speech has not always been universally respected or enforced in the United States, especially in times of war or political turmoil. For example, during World War I, the government passed the Sedition Act of 1918, which made it a crime to criticize the war effort or the government, and led to the imprisonment of thousands of people. Similarly, during the McCarthy era of the 1950s, many artists, intellectuals, and activists were blacklisted and persecuted for their political views, leading to a chilling effect on free speech. Legal framework and principles. The freedom of speech in the United States is protected by both federal and state laws, as well as judicial decisions that interpret and enforce those laws. The Supreme Court has played a key role in defining the scope and limits of the First Amendment, and has developed a body of legal principles that guide the regulation of speech in different contexts. One of the most important principles in free speech jurisprudence is the content-based versus content-neutral distinction. This refers to the idea that government restrictions on speech must be based on the content of the speech itself, rather than on the viewpoint or identity of the speaker. Content-based restrictions are subject to strict scrutiny, which means that they must serve a compelling government interest and be narrowly tailored to achieve that interest. Content-neutral restrictions, on the other hand, are subject to intermediate scrutiny, which means that they must be narrowly tailored to serve a significant government interest, but need not be the least restrictive means of achieving that interest. Another key principle is the public forum doctrine, which distinguishes between different types of government property and determines the level of First Amendment protection that applies to speech in those locations. Traditional public forums, such as parks and sidewalks, are considered to be the most protected spaces for free speech, and the government may only regulate speech in those areas if it has a significant interest in doing so and the regulation is narrowly tailored. Limited public forums, such as government-owned theaters or auditoriums, may be subject to greater regulation, but must still allow for reasonable opportunities for expression. Non-public forums, such as military bases or private property, may be subject to more extensive regulation and may prohibit certain types of speech altogether. The Supreme Court has also recognized several categories of speech that are entitled to less protection under the First Amendment. These include fighting words, speech that is likely to provoke an immediate physical response, obscenity, defamation, and incitement to imminent lawless action. The court has held that these types of speech may be regulated or punished without violating the First Amendment, although the standards for such regulation are often subject to debate and controversy. Challenges and controversies. Despite its importance and historical significance, the freedom of speech in the United States is not without its challenges and controversies. One of the main challenges is the tension between free speech and other values or interests, such as national security, public order, or individual dignity. In recent years, there have been many debates and disputes over the proper balance between free speech and these other concerns. For example, in the aftermath of the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks, the government passed a series of laws and policies aimed at enhancing national security, but which also raised concerns about civil liberties and free speech. The USA Patriot Act, for instance, gave law enforcement agencies broad powers to surveil and investigate suspected terrorists, but also led to accusations of excessive government intrusion and violation of individual rights. Similarly, the use of hate speech laws or campus speech codes to protect marginalized groups from discrimination or harassment has been criticized by some as a form of censorship or political correctness. Another challenge to the freedom of speech is the rise of social media and digital communication, which has created new platforms for expression and interaction, but also new problems and dilemmas. Online harassment, cyberbullying, and hate speech have become major concerns for many users and policymakers, and have led to calls for greater regulation or moderation of online speech. However, such efforts also raise questions about the proper scope and limits of government or corporate control over online content, and the potential for censorship or bias. Conclusion: the freedom of speech is a fundamental right and value in the United States, and has played a vital role in shaping the country's history and identity. However, it is also a complex and contested concept that requires ongoing attention and debate. As society and technology continue to evolve, new challenges and opportunities for free expression will emerge, and it will be up to individuals, communities, and institutions to navigate these issues and protect the principles of liberty and democracy that the freedom of speech represents.